Gravity is nothing more than a name placed amongst or before real forces here on Earth. We begin with one of the most famous proofs on gravity known to man, which is the bowling ball and feather experiment. Here, we drop the bowling ball and the feather and they fall at a different rate. BBC self-admittedly discloses that the bowling ball falls faster than the feather due to air resistance. Another word, to be frank, for density. The feather being less dense and weighing less feels more resistance to falling against the air than the bowling ball. But what happens when we put them in a vacuum chamber? As you can see, the vacuum chamber has no density in it. It is empty of all things. Because there is absolutely no density beneath both the bowling ball and the feather, they both fall by their own weight and at the same speed. The speed at which something moves through density is determined likewise by its own density. When we remove density altogether, then both objects, regardless of their own density, are moving through no resistance. Both have absolutely no force acting against their movement, and so they both fall at the same speed. Now, I mentioned earlier about how they add the word gravity in front of equations that don't need it or scientifically use it. For instance, specific gravity, which scientism itself describes as relative density with respect to water. In other words, buoyancy. The second proof of gravity is more often than not 0 Gs. The same goes for 0 Gs though, known as zero gravity. The trickery is in the name, because 0 Gs has nothing to do with gravity also. The sensation and appearance of weightlessness is caused by the technical maneuver of the aircraft as it begins to descend into its freefall. You also begin freefall at the same time, but inside the aircraft. You have no air pressure against you like the plane does, and you appear to float. You are falling relative to the object you are inside. The entire experience is caused by freefall, and your relative freefall inside, but without air drag. It has nothing to do with gravity whatsoever. They intentionally called it zero gravity because they know it simulates their imaginary concept of gravity. It is misleading and leaves two more proofs of gravity left. The third proof of gravity is G-force, otherwise known as gravitational force. G-force is, however, actually the measurement of the speed that causes the perception of weight. Despite the name, this also isn't caused by gravity. G-force is actually the result of an object's acceleration in relation to freefall. An object's speed getting close to, at, or beyond the speed of freefall causes a sensation and G-force. It's essentially a man-made effect from simulating speeds that are comparable to freefall.
The tide doesn't actually come in and out. What happens is, there is a bulge of water, two of them, on opposite sides of the Earth, caused by the sun and the moon, and Earth turns inside that bulge. So when we say the water rises and falls, tidally, what's happening is we are rotating into the bulge and then out of the bulge.
So the bulge is already there.
It's already there.
And all we kind of do is pass through the bulge.
Pass through, and the water gets high and it gets low. So we're stuck with language from our own perspective, rather than language of what's actually happening.
There is one more proof of gravity, and that is the tides. We are told that the tides are caused by the gravitational pull of the moon. Sure, science can't really prove that one without a doubt, and they don't need to, because it's a lie. The tides are actually caused by electromagnetism and salt, and the rotations of the sun and moon around the Earth. The salt is a natural conductor, especially good at conducting electromagnetic energy. The sun and moon both emit electromagnetic frequency, and the salt reacts to it. That's why we don't see large lakes rising and falling too, or swimming pools, because they don't have a strong natural conductor in them. The only tides that happen in lakes aren't in fact tides, they are called seiches, which are essentially caused by forceful winds coming down off mountains. Tide tables for the sea are influenced by the alignment of the sun and moon and their rotation around the plane below, and the pattern of the tides in the ocean. If the tides were in fact caused by the moon, then we would not have 2 tides a day. Electromagnetism is the only cause of the tides. Please see my video on the pyramids in Egypt for a quick example of how the sun and moon could levitate around the Earth.